Some 2,000 indigenous people in Ecuador rallied to ask the Constitutional Court to give the green light to the impeachment trial against the president, Guillermo Lasso. Also, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian says he expects the final draft of a comprehensive strategic cooperation agreement with Moscow to be ready by next month. Israeli occupation army soldiers continue their deployment in the West Bank village of Huwara, a Palestinian town located in Nablus. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is from the south. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Tuesday, some 2,000 indigenous people of Ecuador rallied to ask the Constitutional Court to give the green light to the impeachment trial against the president Guillermo Lasso. The highest court has in its hands the last word on whether or not to give way to the trial proposed by a sector of the legislative where the opposition is a majority but dispersed. The indigenous people advanced to the seat of the court before going to the National Assembly, where they presented a bill for the management of water resources. This is the second attempt by the legislative to remove Lasso from office. In June, in the midst of indigenous protests due to the high cost of living, opposition legislators presented a motion to dismiss the president for serious social commotion, but did not gather the necessary votes. This time, Lasso faces an alleged corruption case in which his brother-in-law and a former government official were involved.
This government is no longer legitimate, therefore it must listen to the people. We believe it is important that the Constitutional Court, if it does not want a reaction from the people, guarantees through constitutional democratic means the impeachment trial of the government of Presidente Guillermo Lasso. We are here to demand that the Constitutional Court of Ecuador approve the impeachment trial because in the whole Amazon there is violence, crime, assassinations.
In Mexico, the executive secretary of the National Electoral Institute, Edmundo Jacobo Molina, resigned on Tuesday after being restored by a court ruling in his favor. Molina, who had been in office for 14 years, affirmed that his resignation is irrevocable and assured that there were no pressures or threats to make him leave his position. During his career, Molina was the third longest-serving official at the National Electoral Institute and held a key position not only as the legal representative but also as responsible for the operation of the state and district offices. Jacobo Molina's resignation will be effective as of next Monday, April the 3rd, the same day in which the term of office of President Councilor Lorenzo Córdoba Vianello and other 3 councilors ends. The Mexican government has announced the arrest of several officials following a fire at a migrant center which killed 38 asylum seekers. Mexican Foreign Minister or Secretary Marcelo Ebrard said that those directly responsible for the incident at the facilities of the National Institute of Migration in Ciudad Juárez have already been indicted by the Attorney General's office. Ebrard said the governments of the countries of origin of the deceased migrants have been notified of the tragic incident and that Mexico has instructed its consulates in those countries to provide support and assistance to the victims' relatives. Ebrard said that what happened is a terrible tragedy, and he convened Mexico's deep indignation for the incident, as well as the government's will to clarify the facts so as to punish those responsible. On Tuesday, Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez met with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to resume negotiations on the sovereignty of the Malvinas Islands. Fernandez is striving for a speedy, peaceful resolution to the sovereignty issue on the islands. They also discussed climate change, which Fernandez said translates for Argentina in the worst drought experienced over the last 70 years, affecting 173 million hectares. Moreover, the leaders addressed the need to restructure international funding mechanisms, favoring transparency and accessibility to allow indebted countries to recover solvency and have access to international financial markets. President Fernandez is in the United States to meet his U.S. counterpart, Joe Biden, for a bilateral summit for which both sides will be accompanied by at least 8 of their ministers. In the early months of 2023, the United States has gotten no reprieve from its epidemic of mass shootings. Some have happened in public spaces, bringing terror to locations people pass through every day, while others happened behind the closed doors of a home. Some are motivated by personal grievances, while others are terrifyingly random. As of late March, the Gun Violence Archive, a non-profit research group that tracks gun violence using police reports, news coverage, and other public sources, has counted over 130 mass shootings in the United States this year. In this sense, last year the group counted over 600 mass shootings. Of those, 21 involved 5 or more fatalities. We move on to other topics. Barge, loaded with 1,400 tons of methanol, capsized on Tuesday in the Ohio River at Louisville, Kentucky, after a group of cargo vessels broke free from a tugboat carrying them. The state agency's emergency response team said work is underway to round up several of the 10 barges navigating the Ohio River. The threat of leakage of the toxic substance forced authorities to deploy a team of hazardous materials experts who ensure that the locks are closed until navigation is restored. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention stated that methanol is a toxic alcohol that is used industrially as a solvent, pesticide, and alternative fuel source. However, the Louisville Water Company, which manages the water resources in the area, issued a statement assuring the population that the accident did not endanger the community's drinking water sources. This is another incident in a series of such events, as on February 3rd, a train carrying pollutants derailed near the city of East Palestine, Ohio, causing serious damage to the environment and the death of numerous animal species. Ecuadorian authorities on Tuesday night raised to 12 the death toll from the landslide in the town of Lasso in the province of Chimborazo. The total number of casualties increased after the Ecuadorian Attorney General's office confirmed the death of a young man who had been rescued on Monday 27th. The newly reported victim had endured 24 hours under the earth and debris when rescued, but his health condition was delicate. According to the last report issued by the General Rescue Department of Ecuador, 67 people are missing and 31 are injured, while 32 people were rescued alive in the moments after the landslide. According to the Ecuadorian agency, at least 163 houses were affected by the landslide. Even though the number of destroyed buildings is still under evaluation, since many of them were buried under several meters of earth. The landslide in Lasso took place on Sunday 26 and buried 5 neighborhoods of the town, which had been alerting the authorities about the delicate geological situation for some time. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Kazakhstan government resigned after the election of a new lower house. According to the Kazakh constitution, the government must step down when this chamber of parliament is elected. In the meantime, the cabinet of ministers will exercise its functions until the new executive is approved. According to the legislation, the president of the country, after a consultation with the parliamentary groups, must nominate the prime minister and subsequently appoint him to the post under parliamentary approval. Kazakhstan held parliamentary elections on March 19th, and the ruling Ahmadinejad party won 62 of the 98 seats. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev pointed out that the early vote was part of a modernization drive introduced after the country witnessed an attempted coup in January last year. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian said on Wednesday that he expects the final draft of a comprehensive strategic cooperation agreement with Moscow to be ready by next month. At a meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, the Iranian minister said he expects the legal departments of their respective foreign ministries to have the text ready by April. The Iranian minister said that to that end, high-level delegations of both countries have been holding regular meetings and that the presidents have been in direct communication throughout the whole process. This has also resulted in bilateral coordinated stance at international fora. During the meeting with his Iranian counterpart, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called for the rapid resumption of the Iran nuclear deal and added that the world is still waiting for the United States to fulfill its obligations in this regard.
We have a mutual understanding that there is no alternative to this international agreement, which was adopted in unanimity by the UN Security Council. We are in favor of the swift resumption of the full implementation of this resolution and oppose actions that hinder it. The world is still waiting for the United States to return to its obligation under the nuclear deal. We specifically stress that all illegal sanctions against Iran must be lifted.
On Wednesday, a big fire at a solvents factory on the outskirts of the northern Italian city of Novara raised the alarm about the possible spread of toxic fumes. The explosion occurred at the premises of Chemi Company, a factory that produces paints, industrial dyes, and solvents. After the event, the Novara mayor, Alessandro Canelli, appealed to residents to stay indoors and children to remain in their classrooms at schools with windows closed as the entire area is cordoned off. Meanwhile, the regional Environmental Protection Agency began to run tests on the air quality in the area as a large black cloud of smoke has spread over it. So far, authorities have not confirmed any fatalities as a result of the explosion. The European Court of Human Rights on Wednesday heard cases against France and Switzerland for possible failures to protect the environment and alleged inaction on climate change. The case against Switzerland is based on a complaint by an association of elderly people who call themselves the Club of Climate Seniors, concerned with the consequences of global warming on their living conditions and health. The lawsuit against France was brought by Damien Graham, former mayor of Grand-Saintes, a suburb of Dunkirk in northern France, who also argues that the central government has breached its obligation to protect life by failing to take sufficient measures to prevent climate change. On Thursday, China authorities said they strongly oppose the transit stopover planned by Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen in the U.S. on her return from her trip to Central America. The Chinese government claimed that they will not tolerate any form of official contact between the U.S. and Taiwan that violates the One China principle, adding that they will take resolute countermeasures in such case. Reports say that Taiwan's president plans to meet with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California after she returns from Guatemala and Belize at the end of her trip. On the other hand, Su Wenglian, spokesperson for the Taiwan Affairs Office of the China State Council, said the stopover by the Taiwanese authorities in the country is a provocative act that undermines the sovereignty and territorial integrity of China, as well as peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning stressed China sees the visit of the Taiwanese president to the U.S. as a clear violation of the One China principle and as a Washington provocation.
The mistakes of the past do not excuse the mistakes of today, and the addition of the number of mistakes does not provide any legitimacy. The transit to the U.S. is a fake reason conjured up by Taiwan leader. The true reason is to seek breakthroughs and promote her Taiwan independence agenda. It is not China that overreacts, but the U.S. side that blindly connives with and supports Taiwan independence and secessionist forces. China is firmly opposed to any form of official exchanges between the U.S. and Taiwan, firmly opposed to the visit of the Taiwan leader to the U.S. under any name and for any reason, and firmly opposed to any form of contact between the U.S. and the Taiwanese authorities, in violation of the One China principle. China has lodged solemn representations with the U.S. side many times over Tsai Ing-wen's transit to the U.S.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, Israeli occupation army soldiers continued their deployment in the West Bank village of Huwara, a Palestinian town located in Nablus. Residents of the Palestinian village of Huwara denounced security restrictions in the occupation army blocking part of their main street amid heightened tensions between the Palestinians and the foreign military presence. On Wednesday, at least 6 Palestinians were injured after being attacked by Israeli settlers in the Palestinian town of Hawara, south of Nablus in the occupied West Bank. On February, the town was the scene of a settler attack that killed 1 Palestinian and injured hundreds, before Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich denied the existence of a Palestinian people or nation.
The Israeli army closed all intersections leading to the main street and also closed the Huwara checkpoint, which is located north of the town, and some checkpoints leading to the city of neighbors in order to immobilize people in Huwara, and it indeed succeeded, as the main street is also empty and only settlers and the occupation's military vehicles pass through it. There is no sense of security. Everyone awake, afraid for our children because there is no security. Yesterday, the settlers broke Palestinian properties under the protection of the Israeli army, and if you wanted to defend yourself, the soldiers would shoot you with live ammunition and fire tear gas. The army protects the settlers, otherwise settlers are nothing without the army protection.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has changed 5 ministers in cabinet, including the oil minister. According to a government report, Hassan Kadur, who was the general director of the Syrian Petroleum Company for the last 2 years, replaced Bassam Touma as oil minister. Assad named Mohsen Abdelkarim Ali as international or internal trade minister, Abdelkader Jogdar as industry minister, Louay al-Munajed as social affairs minister, and Ahmed Bostashi as state minister. This was the biggest reshuffling of the Syrian head of state cabinet since he was elected for another 7-year term in 2021, when he only changed a few posts in the government. African leaders gathered to review the protocol relating to the free movement of persons, right of residence, and right of establishment. The protocol, adopted in 2018, aimed at demonstrating the imperative of the free movement of persons for continental integration, particularly for the effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. However, the protocol has only been ratified by 4 countries: Rwanda, Niger, Sao Tome and Principe, and Mali, far below the 15 ratification threshold required for it to come into force. In this sense, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the African Union Commission launched a study to identify and demonstrate the benefits of the free movement of persons, to establish the factors that account for the slow ratification of the AU's free movement of persons protocol, and to make policy recommendations on how to accelerate the ratification of the protocol. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.